and then I transcribe the text on that manuscript. So when we're talking about what is potentially our oldest evidence for the New Testament, this manuscript...
The old book arrived in pieces. It had names and words that none of the outsiders could read at first. People did not know what to make of it. For centuries, no one touched it. Then a team of scholars took on the work to bring it back to life, and they did a good job. Join in. But what exactly was this mysterious bundle of pages, passed from hand to hand, damaged and fading? And how did a forgotten codex hold the explosive Gospel of Judas inside? Codex, Tchacos, and a damaged book. The manuscript that holds the text, now known as the Gospel of Judas, is part of a bundle called Codex Tchacos. The Codex surfaced in Egypt in the 1970s. Farmers and traders found the pieces, and a collector moved the bundle out of the area. For years, the pages passed through different hands. The writing was in Coptic, a language used by Egyptian Christians after the ancient Greek era. Many pages had dark spots and holes with torn edges. Some lines had been lost to time and water. At first, only a few specialists saw the pages. The Codex is not like a neat modern book. It is a group of papyrus sheets folded and stitched. The ink faded in many places. Some parts stuck to other parts. Sand and dirt hid some letters. Even trying to open the book risked breaking the remaining lines. Museums and universities knew of the discovery and asked to study it, but the Codex moved in private circles for decades. That movement meant that parts of the text were cut, swapped, or kept apart. In the 1980s and 1990s, a panic about selling old papers grew. Dealers and collectors promised large sums. At one point, a dealer offered the Codex to a major museum, but the deal failed. The text then went silent for a while. Researchers could only get photographs of some pages. Those pictures could not show the full content. The missing pages left big gaps. By the early 2000s, a team of researchers and conservators managed to bring together most of the pages. They used new tools to separate stuck sheets without further damaging them. They cleaned it carefully to remove sand and some old glue. Conservators flattened the pages and placed them on new mounts. The work took long months. Every move could make the ink flake away. What survived was a Coptic copy that dated to a few centuries after the life of Jesus, at least by the look of the script. The copy we have is not the original Gospel in the language it was first written in. It is a later copy. Even so, its words were enough to show a text that spoke in a different voice than the four canonical Gospels in the Bible. The damaged state of the Codex meant that readers had to guess at some letters. Those guesses would later affect how translators read the whole book. Because the Codex lived in private hands for so long, the world heard of it in fits and starts. At times, small reports would appear. At other times, the Codex was simply out of view. When it did come into public light, the story moved fast. The damaged pages made the story messy. The broken state became part of the talk about what the text actually said. Researchers later called the bundle Codex Tchacos after a private owner. Reports placed the discovery in Middle Egypt. That region had many early Christian texts and used the Coptic language, and moved into trade networks. But who finally brought this fragile gospel back into human speech? And how did a secretive bundle of papyrus end up in the hands of translators and National Geographic? Who turned it into English? The translators and National Geographic. By the time the Codex reached researchers, a new effort began to read and restore it. A small team led by Rodolphe Kasser worked with other experts to study the pages. Marvin Meyer, a researcher of early Christian texts, joined the work. Gregor Wurst and other conservators took part in the cleaning and the reconstruction. The group had to decide how to piece the torn sheets and how to make faint letters visible. The work used special light and powerful solvents. Conservators peeled stuck layers apart and used a thin paper backing to hold fragile parts. They made high-quality photographs. These photos let translators see letters that the naked eye could miss on the original. Those photographs were key to the first public translations. A partnership with a major publisher and a media group led to a public release. In 2006, a wide report made the Codex known to an international audience. The team published a translation and a book that showed the text in English. The media project included essays and images that explained the book to many readers. For many people, the 2006 release was the first time they heard of this gospel. The translators worked with a Coptic manuscript that was already a copy. Their goal was to read the lines and find the shape of the original text. With that, they did not claim the copy was perfect. Their book had gaps and uncertain parts. The team offered one complete translation that put the words into English. That translation used a mix of direct word choices and research references for parts that were not clear. The response of the public was immediate. Some readers found the new text surprising. The translation presented passages where Jesus spoke to a small group of followers in a different way from the 4 canonical Gospels. The translators also included information that tried to show how the text might have read in an earlier language. That information helped readers see how a Greek original could have affected the Coptic copy. The restoration and the public project also faced limits. The Codex had no title page and no author line. The team relied on the look of the script and on parallel texts to suggest the meaning of some lines. Where letters were lost, the translators had to offer educated fills. Those fills followed rules, but remained as choices. Later researchers would test those choices and show how different fills gave different meanings. The 2006 release did not end the work on the Codex. More conservation continued. New scans and new methods allowed other teams to study the pages in new ways. The early publication had opened the field. It lets more experts see the same images and speak on the translations. That wider view would lead to debate about both the words and the method used to read them. The media work included a documentary and magazine pieces that reached many readers. National Geographic ran a special feature that showed pages and explained the context. That feature gave the Codex a wide audience. Academics outside the initial team began to read the published translation and the images. Some university professors used the text in classes about early Christianity and Gnostic writings. Digital archives later hosted the high-resolution photos so that libraries and students could study the pages without interfering with the originals. These moves helped the field because more eyes could see the same letters. More eyes meant more ideas about what the text might mean. Their work began a long conversation across the media and among more researchers and public readers that would last for many years and slowly change views. What the text actually says. Judas in the manuscript. The Gospel of Judas reads like a long private talk. It shows Jesus speaking with a small circle of his followers. The tone used is not the same as the public teaching in the 4 Gospels. The voice in this book is more secretive and direct. A bit confusing, right? The text names many of the familiar disciples. It does not give them much audience. In several places, the other disciples are said to be asking questions and speaking to Jesus more. As for Judas, he is calmly captured in the texts. A clear theme in the manuscript is when Jesus decides to give special and important information to one of his followers. The book says that Jesus reveals some very important knowledge to a chosen disciple. The chosen disciple gets to hear information not known by other disciples. In some lines, the text appears to place Judas in that role. One passage narrates Jesus naming the one who will hand him over and setting that act inside a larger plan. The language used in the original version stressed that it was the role of that disciple, and he is not morally judged. The Gospel of Judas also has a view of the material world that differs from the 4 Gospels. It talks of a world created by lesser powers and suggests a higher spiritual realm above those powers. In that framework, the human body and physical life are part of a lower order. Liberation from that lower order comes through knowledge and a turning to the higher realm. The text links this view to the special teaching given in private. Another part of the book lists a set of heavenly beings and gives names for powers that control the lower world. Those names match other early texts that Gnostic scholars study. This shows that the Gospel of Judas belongs to a group of writings that talk about secret things and higher knowledge. It is not a book that sets out to tell history in the same way as the canonical Gospels. Translation choices matter a great deal for this book. Small letter differences change how a sentence reads. For example, one way to read a key line makes Judas look like a friend who follows instructions. Another reading makes the same line look like a report that he will betray his master. The gap in the manuscript at points makes such choices even harder. The text also includes moments where Jesus speaks of his coming departure. In some fragments, he seems to welcome release from the body. In other parts, Jesus warns of misunderstanding among the other followers. Scholars still argue about it. The manuscript shows that early readers had other ways of thinking about the roles of followers and the meaning of key acts. The manuscript names familiar figures such as Peter, Matthew, and other well-known followers. It records short replies from each of them. In one often cited line, the text talks of a follower who will go beyond the other followers. Some translators render that phrase as saying, "The follower will surpass the rest." Other translators read the same letters as a report that he will betray Jesus. Those small shifts show why translation matters for how people understand Judas. Later, readers used these shifts to argue different ideas about the text. The text ends without a neat closure, like the endings of the canonical Gospels. It leaves readers with images and lists, rather than a single story of Jesus' trial and death. The fragmentary state means that readers must put the lines together and make sense of the gaps. Those gaps allow different readers to see very different pictures of Judas and of what the book intends to say. If Judas speaks differently here, then when exactly did this voice first rise? Could the Gospel of Judas be echoing from the 2nd century, reshaping how we date early Christianity? Date, origins, and the ancient evidence. Dating the Gospel of Judas requires attentiveness. The surviving manuscript is a Coptic copy that scholars place a few centuries after the events it speaks about. Radiocarbon tests and the style of the script suggest a 3rd century date for the copy. That date means the book we hold was written long after the life of Jesus. Scholars think the piece we have is itself a copy of older material. Many scholars propose that the first version of the text was written in Greek. That original likely dates to the 2nd century. The idea of a Greek original rests on the use of Greek ideas and on how Coptic translators often copied Greek books. The Coptic copy shows signs of line breaks and phrase choices that fit a Greek source. That evidence is not proof, but it guides how scholars try to rebuild the older form. We also have early references in church writings that point to a name like the Gospel of Judas. In the late 2nd century, the Bishop Irenaeus of Lyon wrote against many groups he called heretical. He mentioned the Gospel of Judas and warned his readers that it taught false ideas. That mention is important because it shows the name existed early. It does not prove that the Coptic text is the same writing that Irenaeus named. The gap in time and the practice of copying mean that many texts circulated under similar names. Textual transmission in the ancient world was messy. Writers copied works by hand and sometimes changed a line to fit local sayings. A book might be copied many times and altered in small ways. A lost Greek original could have spawned several Coptic copies. Each copy would then show small differences. Those differences explain why a 3rd century copy can speak of ideas that started earlier, and why scholars must work to trace the path. The lack of an original Greek manuscript leaves room for discussion. Some translators try to go back to Greek forms when they see Coptic phrases that match Greek words. Others read the Coptic on its own and say it has its own logic. Both methods aim to reach the earliest form, but they do not always give the same answers. That variance affects how scholars date the ideas and how they place the book among other early writings. Finally, the dating matters for how the book fits in history. If the core ideas were common in the 2nd century, the Gospel of Judas may reflect a strand of early Christian thought that did not become part of the mainstream. The copy we have then shows us that this strand survived long enough to be copied and kept. That survival gives the book historical weight even as scholars argue over exact dates and origins. Irenaeus warned that some groups used such a gospel to teach strange ideas. Because of that warning, scholars treat claims with caution. Dating remains an active task, as new methods and images may change readings. If the Gospel of Judas survived on the edges of history, what happens when it crashes into today's spotlight? How did scholars, the media, and even Joe Rogan react to it? The Fight Over Meaning, the Joe Rogan podcast with Wesley Huff, and public reaction. The public talk over the Gospel of Judas has several strands. One is the academic discussion. Another is the way the public reads the book after news reports. The 2006 release made the topic reach bigger audiences. That release brought praise and also sharp criticism. Some scholars welcomed the text as a key example of Gnostic thought. People such as Elaine Pagels and Karen King used the book to show how many kinds of Christian thought existed in the early centuries. These scholars emphasized that the Gospel offers a different set of beliefs about spirit and matter. They saw the text as a useful window into early diversity of thought. Other scholars raised concerns. April Decoded and some papyrologists questioned parts of the published translation and how the restoration work had been done. Their critique focused on choices made where the manuscript was damaged. They argued that making assumptions could interfere with the meaning of the initial information that had been laid out in the book. For those critics, the claim that the book makes Judas a clear hero was too strong. They said the evidence left room for other, less strong readings. The debate also touched on how the book was shown to the public. National Geographic and other outlets framed the story in a way that many readers found exciting. Some scholars said that the media presentation simplified complex issues. The media often used quick lines that suggested a new truth had been found. The academic replies then moved into the public space, where they had to correct or refine headlines and short pieces. Popular culture responded fast. Podcasts, television shows, and books brought the topic back into daily talk. One example is a long conversation on the Joe Rogan Experience where Wesley Huff, a guest invited by Joe Rogan, discussed the Gospel of Judas and its place in early Christian discussions. That podcast helped the idea spread to audiences who might not follow academic research. In such forums, the conversation mixes scholarly points with speculation and personal reaction. The mix of scholarship and showmanship created space for rumors and loose readings. Some online threads claimed that the book overturned centuries of teaching. Others treated the text as a secret manual. Scholars pushed back. They reminded readers that a single damaged copy from centuries later cannot alone rewrite the full history of early Christianity. Despite the heated discussions, the book did two clear things for the public. It showed how varied early Christian thought could be. It also enlightened many people on so much that is not known but has not yet been discovered. The Gospel of Judas remains a point of study and a subject that draws interest beyond academia. Translators from the 2006 team replied to critics and laid out their methods to the public through talks and publications. Other scholars reviewed the photos and suggested alternate readings where the page is damaged. The book also raised questions about how ancient papers move from private hands to public view. In short, the Gospel of Judas remains one important voice among many early Christian writings. Scholarly work will continue for decades, and more is yet to be discovered. If this topic caught your interest, do not go anywhere because there is more to watch, and it's just a click away. Like the video if you found this helpful. I'm sure you found it more than helpful, and you loved it. Leave a comment with any information you know about what we have shared, or even a question if you have any.